do that. Here we go. All right. So let me get over to my screen. Can y'all see my screen? Because I can't see any. Okay, good. All right. So we are on our next to last lesson on Song of Solomon. And so we'll be talking about the maturing marriage this evening. And then next week, chapter 8 gets a little bit weird, but we'll cover chapter 8 next week and go from there. Depending on whatever is decided as far as when we go back to the building for classes, we will, we'll either do another study here online, or we will try to wrap some things up and get prepared to go back to the building. We'll kind of, play that one by ear. But this class will be over next, at the end of next week's class. So hopefully you have enjoyed Song of Solomon. I really enjoy it as a study. It's anytime you go back and you study marriage and the way that we should act as husbands and wives and the way that we should love each other, I truly believe that the family is the foundation to our society being successful, and it is the foundation for our church being successful. If we have a church full of healthy marriages, we're going to do a lot more and be a lot more successful as people and as a church. And I think that's important for us to recognize why God put so much in Scripture about marriage, especially even a book like Song of Solomon. So that to me is extremely important for us to discuss and dig into as we work through that. So let me ask this question real quick, and I'll kind of have to scan through here as far as how long different ones of you have been married. I just don't even know the answer to this question, so I thought I would just kind of go through and I'll try to unmute you as I ask. I don't think that's too personal of a question. But Larry, how long have you been married? You have to unmute you when I call your name, so unmute yourself.
33.
33. Okay, awesome. Randy, how about you? 42. I'm just doing, say it again.
42.
42 years. Fantastic. Wow. 30 is nothing to 30. Larry, that's nothing to shy away from either. Richard and Janet, how long y'all been married? You have to unmute yourself. So I think I left that up. 5, 50. I'm going to go with 50, 50, 55, 52, 52 years. Wow. That's
57.
57 years. Wow. That's a long time to put up with. I won't say which one. That's incredible. All right, Fultz, how long y'all been married?
Not long enough.
Not long enough.
31 years. 31.
31 years. Okay. Wow. All right, Karen, Jody, how long have y'all?
25 years.
Say it again.
25.
25. Okay. The Pose, how long have y'all?
40.
40. Okay. Wonderful. Elaine, how long were you married? I can't hear you. You have to unmute it. Okay. Is that 10, 20? 10. Okay. All right. Alan and Julie.
30 years.
30 years. All right. Jeff, Brenda, how long have y'all been married?
We've been living together 50 years.
50 years. Wow.
You didn't catch that. You didn't catch that, did you?
Matt and Charlie.
We lived together for 50 years.
7.
7?
Yep.
Okay. Stephen Meredith.
25.
25. Okay. Wow. Let's see, we got Rex over there. Rex, how long were you married?
Diane and I were married 37 years.
37, wonderful. All right, David and Shannon?
27.
Wow. Okay, so I'm the young guy here, having been married. I think this year is 20 years for us. So we're the young. I don't, you know. I feel like I'm in the young crowd here. But that's incredible. I mean, that's how marriage should be. That's the way marriage is supposed to work. That it's got this permanence to it. It's got this longevity to it. That there's a commitment to the ideals and a commitment to the truth and the longevity of marriage. That's what God intended. We all know that. Probably most of us were brought up with that idea that when we get married, it's for life, and there, was going to be little to no exception to that. And I think that's important to recognize, especially in our world today, where that's not particularly recognized. I remember when a friend of my wife's that she went to high school with got married, and she was marrying a rodeo, an up-and-coming rodeo star. Tiffany grew up out in the country, and her friend was a rodeoer herself, but she was marrying a guy in the rodeo. And apparently, and I've never been around the rodeo much, but apparently it is not a place of high moral values for a lot of the people that participate in the rodeo. And so some of her friends pulled her aside and said, well, he has a history of kind of, dancing around from woman to woman. And her response was, well, I'll try it out. If he's not what I want, I'll just divorce him. I'll move on. And that's kind of how the world treats the whole concept of marriage, that it really doesn't matter, that it's just a piece of paper, that it's not something that we really have to be obligated to. That's why you can have TV shows now about first date marriages and blind marriages where people get married before they've ever even met each other. And those kind of things. Bachelor and bachelorettes are all about getting the person married, and those things never last. And that's just why it's pretty amazing to see the numbers that we're showing here, 30, 40, 50 years, when the world looks at all of that and says it doesn't really matter. And so that's not what the Song of Songs teaches. The Song of Songs teaches not only a respect for going into marriage, and that marriage needed to be undefiled, as it says over in Hebrews 13, but that even during the marriage is supposed to be undefiled. And so let's read chapter 7 together. And once we're done with chapter 7, we'll talk about some details of it and some main ideas of it and go from there. Chapter 7, starting verse 1, how beautiful are your sandaled feet, princess. The curves of your thighs are like jewelry, the handiwork of a master. Your navel is a rounded bowl. It never lacks mixed wine. Your belly is a mound of wheat surrounded by lilies. Your breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle. Your neck is like a tower of ivory. Your eyes like pools of Heshbon by Bath Rabim's gate. Your nose is like the tower of Lebanon looking toward Damascus. Your head crowns you like Mount Carmel, the hair of your head like purple cloth. A king could be held captive in your tresses. How beautiful you are, and how pleasant, my love, with such delights. Your stature is like a palm tree. Your breasts are clusters of fruit. I said, I will climb the palm tree and take hold of its fruit. May your breasts be like clusters of grapes, and the fragrance of your breath like apricots. Your mouth is like fine wine flowing smoothly for my love, gliding past my lips and teeth. I am my love's, and his desire is for me. Come, my love, let's go to the field. Let's spend the night among the henna blossoms. Let's go early to the vineyards. Let's see if the vine has budded, if the blossom has opened, if the pomegranates are in bloom. There I will give you my caresses. The mandrakes give off a fragrance, and at our doors is every delicacy, both new and old. I have treasured them up for you, my love. So again, you've got some, great statements here of just people's, of his and her love for each other. And you know, again, some interesting ways of wording things, I think, ways that we're not used to. Any observations you have here in the way that things are said here? Anything, you know, first of all, who's speaking for the majority of this chapter? What do you think? Raise your hand or just unmute and go ahead and say it.
Husband.
I think it's the man.
Okay, the husband's talking. That becomes pretty obvious because he right there in the beginning calls her princess. And then some of the descriptions he have, you can tell it's a man describing a woman. And so that becomes pretty obvious. A lot of people think that maybe she is speaking at the end of the chapter, which I tend to agree with. But that is, we'll get to that in a moment. Anything you noticed just overall about the way he describes her here? And again, feel free to just unmute yourself and go.
Very similar to what he did earlier in the book.
Okay. So you have some similarities there between the way he says it now and the way he says it earlier. Any differences anybody notices?
Starts with her feet this time.
Say it again.
He starts with her feet.
Okay. Okay. All right. So and again, it's interesting here, you know, starting with the feet. Where did he start last time?
Her head.
Her head. So it's interesting that here, the first two times he does this, you go back to chapter 4, and then you also have over in chapter 6, you have the description where he starts at her head or her hair and works his way down. It's interesting that this time it's opposite. He starts at her feet, goes to her thighs, goes to her belly, goes to her breast, her neck, then her face. So he goes up the body here instead of down the body. I don't know that there is a significance of that. You know, some people have argued different things. Again, I try to stay out of the arguments and the just assumptive parts of the people's interpretation here. I will say that there does seem to be even more intimacy involved in this one. Before it was more just her beauty. Now he seems to dwell on her breast. He seems to dwell on more intimate descriptions of her. So there does seem to be even a greater intimacy here, and we'll talk about more of that when we get to the end of the chapter. So there is that side of it also. I will say also, chapter 4 and chapter 6, one of the things we notice is that he uses almost the exact same description. Y'all remember that? And we talked about the reason for that might be that he's reassuring her that he still feels about her the way he felt about her before they got married. Now he has moved on to using different descriptions. So he's no longer using the same language, the same ideas, and the same images in the way he describes her here. He is using different images. He's using different ideas. So, you know, the sandaled feet is not something he's really talked about before. The navel and the breast he has, you have a repetition there in verse 3 to what he says earlier in the book. But he also describes her breast in other ways here. He describes her neck before, but the description is different. He has never described her nose before now. And just again, men, as a general rule, never tell a woman that her nose looks like a tall tower, or some of your versions might say a mountain or a hill. Most women don't want attention brought to the size of their nose. But, you know, it is interesting here that he does. I mean, I don't think this is insulting in any way based on the context. I think this is probably a very complimentary thing that he says here. You do get a sense of possibly people, because of verse 5, think that she might have been a redheaded woman. My Christian Standard Bible says purple cloth. Some of yours will say scarlet. The word is used interchangeably in Hebrew. And so some people think that maybe the description here is that she has red hair. Again, I don't know what to necessarily be dogmatic about here in this description. But I will say, you know, what you do see very clearly is that there is a clear, clear description of her beauty. There is nothing in there that isn't him giving her his full attention and him making sure that she is described beautifully and that she is described in a way that is that is going to make her feel very loved. And so that's, again, the whole point of all of this. And part of what he's doing here is he is, again, revealing to her his desire to know her intimately. And so the reason I believe that this section, though, describes their later marriage is because of this end section that you have here, verses 10 through verse 13. If all we had here was verse 1 down through verse 9, and there he's just describing her in an intimate way, he's describing her body, he's describing her beauty, then that could just be more wedding night stuff, right? But here it is interesting that there is a progression after this one from the way she responds to him. So this clearly becomes her speaking. I am my love's, and his desire is for me. So you've got a clear change in speaker, a change in perspective. It goes from him describing her to her describing him, and not really describing him, but inviting him. But what I want you to notice is if you will compare the way she responds to him through the different sections of the book. So he describes her back in chapter 4. Everybody turn back to chapter 4. And I want you to notice there, after he describes her very beautifully, and the same kind of language, different images, but the same kind of languages we've already talked about. Look in verse 12. My sister, my bride, you are a locked garden and a sealed spring. Your branches are a paradise of pomegranates with choicest fruit, henna with nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, and all the trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloe with all the best spices. You are a garden spring, a well flowing water streaming from Lebanon. Okay, so here she is just, before this point, she's described as off limits. Now she's described as a locked garden. Okay, a locked garden. You compare that to the way he describes her over in chapter 7, which is where we're at in tonight's text. Now it is, I am my love's, his desire is for me. Come, my love, let's go to the field. Let's spend the night among the henna blossom. You skip down to verse 13. The mandrakes give off a fragrance, and at our doors is every delicacy, both new and old. I have treasured them up for you, my love. So there is a difference in the description between a woman who is closed off and off limits to a woman who is now open and ready and available. And so you have a progression in their relationship from being something that is, for lack of better terms, uncomfortable, something that is new, something that is not something that they've experienced before, to now there is an openness in their marriage. There is a togetherness in their marriage. The intimacy is more automatic now than it was initially. And so I think that's an important aspect of this marriage story that you have in the poetry here. While he is still describing her as beautiful and lovely and and exactly everything he desires. She has progressed through this story from being a woman who is closed off to a woman who is, as we saw right after the marriage, who is very unsure of herself and very unsure of him, because there's that concept of has he gone down to other beds of spices? Is he out in the fields with others, with other young women and those types of things? And now it's back to my love is mine and I am his and I am open to him. And there's that open intimacy that is a part of this marriage now. So again, I think that progression that you have here is important. So essentially in our chapter, before I stop and have a little bit of discussion here, the husband continues to describe his love for his wife throughout their marriage. He tells her that she is very beautiful. He describes her beauty in great detail. They are enjoying their intimacy together. He is enjoying the fact that she is now more open and willing and a very willing partner in their physical intimacy. And she just enjoys that intimacy and togetherness now also, more so than she has before. And so you do have that progression in marriage. Now, all of that I think is important to recognize because it shows that marriage should be progressing. Marriage, when two people are married, they should be becoming closer together and more intimate and more willing to serve the other and assure the other and to build the confidence in that marriage. And so I think that's important. And I think, many of y'all have been married much longer than I have. I think you would probably say that's exactly the way this is supposed to work. The word we tend to use, and I don't know that it is the correct word, but we grow more comfortable together. Okay, would everybody agree with that? In your marriage, you tend to, over the years, grow more comfortable together. And again, some people say that's a bad thing, that comfortable means you get lazy in the marriage. And that can be true. That does not have to be true. But here in the description that you have in this book, it's interesting that she is the one who has done most of the changing in this story. She has grown from just appreciating the fact that he will care for her and protect her, but she is essentially scared of him or scared because she does not believe he really loves her. And now she seems to have a lot of confidence in their marriage. And when you get to the end of chapter 7, she has changed her story from where is he? He's gone. What am I going to do? Let me go out and search for him. I feel like I've been abused. Remember that section in the middle of the book? To now, she is completely comfortable with this man. She belongs to him. He belongs to her. They are just completely in love with each other, and they will go to the fields together. Which interesting, when he went to the fields before, did she feel good about that? No, but now they go to the fields together, right? Do you see how that changes in this story? So their relationship has grown in such a way that now she is comfortable with who he is and how he loves her, and she's comfortable expressing her love to him. To the point to where their doors are open towards each other. I will give you my caresses. The mandrakes give off a fragrance. Mandrakes was an ancient aphrodisiac, which is why it's used so often in this book. But that idea of I have treasured them up for you, my love. That concept there of she had saved herself for this relationship, and it has been entirely worth it, is the way that this story progresses and why that becomes so important. So again, That's all part of the, you know, what we're supposed to learn from this book, from this poem. First, the man can never quit displaying his love for his wife, ever. And that's where I say that word comfortable can be interpreted as the wrong word. If what we mean is we've grown comfortable in the marriage is that the man no longer treats the wife in a special way, the wife is no longer serving her husband and respecting him the way she should, then that's not the right kind of comfortable. But if comfortable means that they have grown confident in one another's feelings for each other, they've grown confident in the commitment that they have made, that confidence, which I think is a better word than comfortable, is the goal of a good marriage. You know, that man has to continue for the rest of his life to express to his wife how beautiful he thinks she is. That he find, you know, women get older, and in our culture, they're told that, you know, older is less attractive. That's why makeup and wrinkle cream and all of that kind of stuff is such a big business in our world today. I was told years ago that in a store, if you ever walk into a department store, you can tell immediately what the biggest money-making items in the store are by what are put in the center aisle. They're always going to put the things they make the most money on in the center. Well, you go into any department store today, what two things do you find in the center of a store? Makeup and perfume, right? Been that way for years because they make a ton of money on makeup and perfume. And that's why, you know, again, a woman in our world today is told to fix herself up and to do all these things and to, you know, make herself stay attractive. And I think one of the reasons for that is we men do a poor job of reminding them how beautiful we find them. And this book teaches men, continue for the rest of your marriage to describe your wife in a way that makes her feel beautiful. I used to get in trouble as a preacher. So my first preaching job was with my in-laws in the audience, which is not a great first preaching job. I'll just go ahead and tell you that right now. But I learned a really important lesson in that first preaching job, which was this. I used to have a really bad habit of making fun of my wife in sermons. Bad idea. But my wife let it roll off her back. Her mama did not. And I got pulled to the side one day and told what was what and what I was allowed to say and not allowed to say from that lectern about her daughter. And that, you know, I learned a lesson there. I was not doing a good job of letting my wife know publicly the way I feel about her. You'll hear different words come out of my mouth now when I talk about my wife publicly. And that was actually funny in Memphis. That was one of the things that several people commented on when we were leaving, was just how very obviously I loved my wife because of the things I would say about her publicly. And all husbands should do that. We should be obviously and overwhelmingly displaying the way we feel about our wives to them and about them to others. And so when we sit around and we complain about that old lady, that's not going to go very far. That's not a good thing to do. That's not what men should do if they really, truly want to make their wives feel good. We should be telling them how beautiful they are, just like this man does. And we should be not just talking about them to others, but telling them that they are beautiful and telling them that she is the only one that you have eyes for. One of my favorite passages in scripture is Job 31 verse 1, which hopefully all of you men have memorized because it is such an important verse for us men to keep in our heads. I'm going to turn over there and read it. I know what's in my head as far as a quote, but it says here, I have made a covenant with my eyes. How then could I look at a young woman? that concept of I have made a covenant with my eyes that I'm only going to look at one woman. That is the way men should be. That is the way our marriages should be built. And so we should have that sort of particular care in the way that we think about our wives and the way that we act. And so that needs to be a part of the way, our wives should have that kind of confidence in us, that they know that our eyes are only for them. Married couples need to enjoy intimacy more often. And again, I never would infringe on the details of any of that with any couple ever, because that is such a personal and intimate part of marriage. But generally speaking, that is one of those things that both men and women benefit from in a marriage relationship. That is something that God created it to create oneness and togetherness and closeness within a marriage. And so a married couple should be making that a priority. And if that's not a priority, there's probably a reason it's not a priority. Either the man or the woman or both are doing something wrong if it's not a priority. And so that needs to be something that is a part of the marriage. And then married couples need to want to be together. I knew a couple, this was probably 25 years ago. I was a teenager, and I was at a camp, and I found out that this counselor that I really enjoyed, he took separate vacations from his wife. So she would take her vacation with all her girls, and he would take his vacation with all his boys, which again, that's not in and of itself necessarily wrong, but they never did anything together. Whenever they went to the movies, she went to her movie, he went to his movie. Whenever they were watching TV, he would watch in this room, she would watch in that room. They never found anything to do together. And it became a very sad story eventually when he found a woman who was interested in things that he was and had an affair. And their marriage ended up dissolving. I've seen that happen so many times, and it generally starts with two things. One is when a couple refuses to put the other first. And then secondly, when a couple kind of gives in to the idea of, okay, well, we're just different people. And that is an unfortunate thing when a couple does not want to be together. Because when a couple doesn't want to be together, guess what? Eventually, they're not going to be together because they're not really committed to one another. They're just staying together for the kids' sake or for obedience sake. And eventually the devil will win out on that. And so that's something to be very mindful of. It is interesting here in this section, earlier in the book, the man went off to work and she stayed home. And she worried about him while he was off in the fields. But when you get to the end of chapter 7, they're going off into the fields and the vineyards together. I don't know if that's for midnight tryst, or I kind of wonder if it's not even opening up the concept of she goes out into the fields with him. She goes out to take care of the business with him, because we know that's what she grew up doing. And we know that that's what he does for a living. Well, it makes sense that she would go with him to do that in their marriage. And so they work together, essentially. They're spending that time together. And so I think that's a great way to build the marriage relationship together is to go be together. A friend of mine just got engaged, and he said it was because it was Zach Yao, who some of y'all might know, Lloyd Barker's grandson, just got engaged. And he said the reason he chose the woman that he chose is because his grandpa Lloyd once told him that he needed to marry his best friend, somebody that he enjoyed being around, because when the passion dies down, you still want to have a reason to want to be with that person. Is essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but that's the idea. One of the greatest blessings of my life is that I'm married to my best friend, and we love to be together. I actually enjoy working from home because I do get to go up and see her, or she gets to come down and see me, or we're still around each other, and I just it floors me, the idea of just how how some people don't, some couples don't enjoy being together. I just, that amazes me. So, any thoughts, comments, additions? You're just gonna have to unmute because I can't see you all at one time. No one wants to add to that? Okay, well, we might get out of here super early tonight if nobody wants to add to that. I do, again, this class can seem somewhat repetitive as you go through the Song of Solomon, but what I want you to pick up on is, as you progress through the timeline of a relationship, whether we're talking about the courting in the beginning, or we're talking about at the wedding ceremony, or the honeymoon, or years after the honeymoon, notice the fact that there are so many similarities in the book. That as you go through this story, the way he treats her does not change. He treats her, when they've been married for a while, the same way he treated her before they were married. And isn't that what people always say these days, that you should still date your wife? Men should still date their wife. That gets really difficult when you have a whole bunch of children running around. Our dates end up being taquitos while we watch a movie together on the couch or something like that. But you still, whether you actually go on the date or not, I still have to treat my wife with the same sort of love and deference and respect and kindness and compassion as I did when we dated. And if I'm not willing to do that, then I'm not really working on my marriage. And so that becomes a really important part of marriage that's taught here in the Song of Solomon. It doesn't matter at what point I'm at in my marriage, I still have to make my wife feel beautiful. It doesn't matter at what point I'm at in my marriage, I still need to find ways to make her feel special. And it doesn't matter if we've been married 2 years, 20 years, or 50 years, I still should let my wife know I would rather be with her than with any other person on earth. And if I don't feel that way, then something's wrong, and I need to do the hard work of fixing that marriage so that it becomes a joyful relationship again instead of a burden. And that's where I think people go wrong a lot of times in the marriage counseling that I've had the experience doing, is that people are looking for feelings of attraction or feelings of those kind of things, which those things should still exist. I'm not arguing against that. But the truth is, the way marriage should work is it should be about providing one another joy. It should be about giving one another that feeling of satisfaction and compassion. And that has very little to do with the way my wife treats me. It has everything for me to do with the way I treat my wife. And my advice to her would be the opposite. It's not, the way she feels in that marriage has less to do with the way I treat her and more to do with the way she treats me. Because I can't control the way she treats me. I can only control the way I treat her. And if I treat her right, the way God says this works is that she will eventually treat me right also. And so we, you know, again, I'm sure there are exceptions to that proverbial idea, but that does not erase the fact that there is a lot of truth in it also. Any other ideas, thoughts? No? Okay, well, looks like we had a 45-minute long class tonight instead of a full hour, and that's okay. Up, yes, y'all go ahead. Y'all have to unmute yourself, I think, because I can't figure out how to do it here on the iPad. Let me see.
Just hover over your picture, and in the top right corner, you'll see it says mute or unmute in blue. Just hit the unmute button. Hover over the picture of you and Richard.
Yeah, because it won't let me do it. Well, I'd be glad to.
Yeah, it will, when you're on the right thing, it will say mute. Because
It's a little microphone with a line through it. That's what you're going to try to click.
It's in the top
Sometimes
right.
you can just hit the space bar, hold the space bar down and unmute it.
There it is. Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Go.
Okay, let go.
Nope, now you're
Oh, I
muted.
see. I see.
Well, there you go. Good.
I guess one of the things that stands out to me is the time spent talking about good things about the wife or the woman. He spends a great deal of time making sure she understands what he thinks, and she does the same. So it's important. That may be the simplest part of this exercise, is that you have to talk, and you have to talk about things that mean importance to the one you're talking to. We went across town to hear a preacher I hadn't heard very much, and he was giving a lesson on marriage and how to make it work. And he said, I asked one of the elders about advice, and he said he told me something of the most things that are most appreciated was that you need to tell your wife every day how much you appreciate her. And he used the phrase, of all women, you excel them all. Of all women, you excel them all. And he said that meant more to him than any advice he could give. And he was making sure that the audience understood the need to communicate on a regular basis and not be detrimental to their feeling, but to praise them every day. That's a very simple message.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add on to that, and this isn't nearly as important as what Richard just said, not just talk to them about how appreciated and lovely they are, but sometimes, men, it's just listening to them. I know in my wife's case, she is talking to 5 little ones all day long, every single day. And if I've been out all day long, when I get home, guess what? She wants to do a lot of talking to me because she needs some sort of adult interaction and, you know, to throw ideas across and brainstorm with and all of that kind of stuff. And I'll be honest, there are some times when I come in and I've been out with people all day long and I don't want to talk anymore, but I still have to stop and listen. And I still have to be willing to communicate and talk back and forth, because that by itself makes her feel appreciated. If I spend all of my energy out with other people and I don't save any energy for her, well, then that makes her feel like she's neglected. And so we need to be very conscious of that, both men and women, of making sure that you are even sacrificing what you want for the sake of giving them what they need. That becomes a really important part of this whole relationship. But To reiterate what Richard said, part of that is making sure you tell them how appreciated, how lovely, how wonderful, just what all that they do that truly you value. That is a huge part of that communication that needs to happen between a man and a woman. Thank you, Richard. Anything else? Don't see anybody jumping in. I will say this, did I see a hand? Nope, okay. So I will say this, and I just say this as a newbie at Edwards Lake. Okay, first of all, I really appreciate the marriages we have in our congregation. There are, just going down the numbers there that we did. I know we have younger families who aren't in this study, but those younger families will be greatly assisted and lifted up and will grow in great ways if they can get to know the marriages in this congregation, some of the more mature marriages in this congregation. So that's one of the great values we have as a congregation that we can offer to people. Secondly, one of the things that I think every congregation needs to do more of, as I've kind of worked for different congregations and heard of stories and talked to elders and preachers in different places, is that we need to create a way that allows our marriages to grow within the congregation. Especially if we do much evangelism and we start bringing, we start growing, we're going to grow with people with poor marriages, because those are the people who are looking for gospel answers. They're looking for fixes. They're looking for solutions. And so those are the people who end up looking to Jesus. So when you invite people to Christ, you are generally inviting people with problems to Christ. And so if a congregation that has a very strong base of marriages can use those marriages and that wisdom that is found in those marriages to help lift up those other couples, it can go a long way in helping people. And so I think congregations as a whole across the world need to figure out a way to do that. One of the ways that we did that in Memphis, and I'm not saying this is what we would need to do here, but we started what we called a marriage mentorship program. And the way that worked was we would take someone like Richard and Janet, who've been married for 57 years, if I remember the number correctly, and we would couple them up with a couple that's been married for 5 years. And the responsibility was get together twice a month, just to talk about marriage, just so that the younger couple can observe the marriage of Richard and Janet and learn from it and see the way Richard and Janet talk to each other. And then we'd switch that around every 6 months so that they could see different marriages working. But the goal was, I know as a younger man and as a young married couple, I grew up with a good godly example, and not everybody does. And so if I grew up in an abusive home where my dad mistreated my mom, well, what do you think I'm going to do when I get married? I'm going to follow some of those same tendencies. I need other marriages to observe and learn from, especially if I am a new Christian and learning what the Bible teaches about marriage. If we can create ways in which our younger, less experienced couples can observe and learn from our more experienced couples, only good will come from that. And so that's just something to think about. That does not have to be a formalized program. I am not necessarily a proponent of programs. Richard and I have talked about that before. I like things to happen naturally and organically. So sometimes that could be just, Richard and Janet saying, hey, that young couple needs help. We're just going to start spending time with them and just have them over once a month. And that observation, that relationship, can make a huge difference in the way those young couples can learn to love one another. And isn't that really what Scripture teaches? Paul, tells the older women to do what? Teach the young women to love their husbands. And I'm sure my wife had to learn that from somewhere, from someone, because I didn't make it easy on her. But that idea of, our older couples being willing to teach the younger couples how to grow a good marriage so that theirs lasts 57 years, that can be an amazing offering we give to the world around us if we're willing to do so. So we will finish Song of Solomon next week. But yay! I know I'm excited. I get excited when projects like this are starting, and then I get about halfway through it, and I'm like, I'm ready to move on to something else. So I'm excited to move on to something else, but I don't know what the something else is yet. I will let y'all know next Wednesday night, and we will go from there. So if I can't see everybody's hands right now, so anything else? I kind of scan through you real quick. Anything else that needs to be brought up?
Hey, do you know why our picture has your name under it? Is it because I used your Zoom account
Yes,
the
it
other
is.
day?
Yep. So if you use my Zoom and you want it to have your name, you can reassign the name of the person signing in,
Oh,
and
okay.
then you can type in Pose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next time we'll do that.
Yeah, I just thought you typed my name in because you love me so much. So.
For
We
those,
do, Adam, we do.
for those who don't know
That's
us,
not the case. That's
We were trying to trick people.
well, y'all look way better than I do. So especially with my screen blacked out. So.
Much older.
Any other comments, questions? All right. Well, then we will stop there. I'll stop my share here, and we will go from there. So, all right. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and sign everybody off. And,
See you went Saturday night.
That's right. Saturday night for the singing. Thanks for the reminder, Larry. So
6:30.
Night for the singing, if you're able to make
6:30, is that right? 6:30?
6:30. We said 6 to 7:30.
6, okay.
Yep,
All right.
6 to 7:30.
Thank you, Adam, for the
All right.
class.
Yep. Bye, y'all.